Hello, everyone, and thank you again for your patience. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this very, very special event today. My name is Gina Segal. I'm the Special Projects Assistant here at the Wende Museum. And I'd like to just start by saying we're gathered here in the wake of a very pivotal historical event, an event that may feel if we could silence phones, that would be great. No shame, but an event that may feel as though it occurred very far away from our lives here in the West, in a distant world almost. But the reverberations of this event, which took place just 2 weeks ago, have been felt worldwide, and actually it has very real, very close to home implications for our lives here. I'm speaking, of course, of the death of Alexei Navalny. Navalny was a fierce and tireless anti-corruption activist who led the political opposition to Russian President Vladimir Putin for over a decade, and his murder was an affront to democracy and freedom, not just in Russia, but around the globe. So where does his death leave us? Ideally, I think with a spirit of continuing hope and determination, as well as motivation for the creation of art that does the important work of spreading messages, raising awareness, and making change. And I can think of no one whose art does that work more powerfully than Nadya Tolokonnikova. Nadya's work has meant so much to me personally. At university, I wrote papers on her activism and examined her song lyrics as I waded through my study of the Russian language. And as a musician and artist myself, I'm endlessly inspired, along with so many others, by her multidisciplinary sensibility and punk ethos. Nadya is a conceptual performance artist and founder of Pussy Riot, a global feminist protest art collective. In 2012, she was sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment following an anti-Putin performance. Nadya then went through a hunger strike, protesting horrible prison conditions, and ended up sent to a Siberian penal colony. There, she managed to maintain her artistic activity, and with her prison punk band, she toured around Siberian labor camps. In 2018, Nadya published the book, Read and Riot, Pussy Riot's Guide to Activism. She's a co-founder of the independent news service and media outlet Media Zona, and is co-founder of the Web3 creators collective Unicorn DAO, through which she has been instrumental in raising over $7 million for Ukraine. She has spoken before the US Congress, British Parliament, and European Parliament, appeared as herself on season 3 of House of Cards, and performed at Banksy's Disneyland exhibition. Pussy Riot's Punk Prayer was named by The Guardian among the best art pieces of the 21st century. It's been endorsed by Marina Abramovich, Judy Chicago, and Ai Weiwei, and was created into an immersive experience at London's Saatchi Gallery. Recently, Nadya curated the auction My Body, My Business at Sotheby's. Nadya's protest art NFT, Virgin Mary, Please Become a Feminist, and the Putin's Ashes installation at Deitch Gallery in January 2023 propelled her into a new criminal case and had her added to Russia's most wanted criminal list. Nadya created the works you see here today on our colonnade outside in response to the death of her friend, Alexei Navalny. The title of the exhibition, Fear Not, comes from something Navalny said: "I'm not afraid, and you shouldn't be afraid either." It's especially significant and timely for the Wende to display these works right now with their strong connection to our current exhibition, Visions of Transcendence, which really underscores the role of art in overcoming oppressive circumstances. So Nadya today will first give a speech of about 15 minutes, followed by a 30-minute conversation with the Wende's chief curator and director of programming, Segal. And then we'll have 15 minutes at the end of that conversation for a Q&A with the audience, for which microphones will be passed around. So look out for those. If you have a question, raise your hand and they will arrange it. I'd like to thank the entire Wende staff who made this program possible and the exhibition possible with less than a week of prep time. We'd also like to thank Tanya Turner-Carroll, who brought us in touch with Nadia and without whom today's event and the exhibition wouldn't have been possible. And last but not least, John Caldwell for his great help with the organization of this special program and exhibition. And Nadia, I think I speak for everyone when I say it is an honor to have this chance to hear from you and speak with you today. Спасибо большое. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Nadya Tolokonnikova.
One year ago, I addressed Putin from the stage of the TED conference, and I delivered a message directly to him. I told him that he knows that he has lost already, and that's why he's so openly evil. It's a wounded creature, bleeding its poisonous intestines on everyone and everything around, torturing, murdering, bombing hospitals and maternity wards. It's been a year, and I have some updates. I know that we will win long term. Time and history is not on Putin's side. Putin and his imperialist craziness will pass, and I'm sure younger Russian people would eventually opt for living in a peaceful, successful, democratic country and being welcomed in the world, rather than being cannon fodder in imperialist wars and treacherously invading innocent people's homes and taking their lives. History and time is not on Putin's side, but it's taken too long. I used to be proud of being from Siberia. I refused to leave Russia. After I served 2 years in jail, all my friends abroad were asking, "Why don't you leave?" I didn't want to. I wanted to be a Russian political activist, and for that, I needed to be in Russian. After getting released, we founded Media Zona, teamed up with a group of journalists who lost their jobs because they refused to lie about the Russian invasion in Ukraine in 2014. We reported truthfully, Putin invaded Ukraine. Putin annexed Crimea. The day we got out of jail, we started to work on a prison reform initiative because we did not want people to continue dying from torture, overworking, and lack of medical treatment in Gulag. Since my release from jail, I was regularly physically assaulted, arrested, and threatened to be thrown back in jail. And still, I refused to leave because I wanted to be a Russian political activist. And I needed to be in Russia. I loved my country. I saw courageous people around me, journalists, fierce feminist activists, proud, gorgeous gay activists, human rights defenders risking their lives in Chechnya and Dagestan, artists and musicians who didn't shy away from politics. I was in love with every one of them, with their spirit, strength, inner beauty, their readiness to risk everything to protect the most sacred, human life, dignity, and happiness. I used to be proud of being from Russia. Now I'm ashamed. I'm from a terrorist state. I'm from a dictatorship led by a war criminal. In these dark times, I still have people who shine brightly among monstrosity, distortion, ugliness, and corruption of human spirit. More often than not, those people would end up being in jail or in exile. It is Sasha Skachelenko, an openly lesbian artist who got sentenced to 7 years. Her crimes? Anti-war stickers. She said in her closing statement, "Despite the fact that I am in the cell, it is possible that I am much more free than all of you." It is Ilya Yashin, whom I've known for over 15 years. We stood shoulder to shoulder at countless rallies. Today, he is one of Putin's captives. Ilya serves 8.5 years for supporting Ukraine. And in the light of recent events, I'm terribly scared for his life. It is Vladimir Karamurza, serving 25-year sentence for speaking out against the war in Ukraine. "You can't stop the future with bullets, poison, or prison," wrote Vladimir a few days ago from his solitary confinement in a Siberian penal colony. Thousands of people came to Alexei Navalny's funeral, risking their freedom, risking everything they have. "Russia without Putin," they shouted. "Putin is a killer. Free political prisoners. And also, no to war." Today, Russians who are still in country risk 15-25 years for supporting Ukraine. We live under a military dictatorship, and yet, still, people support Ukraine. They want to stop the bloodshed. We, Russian activists, used to say, "My Russia is in jail. Моя Россия живет в тюрьме." Today we say, "My Russia is murdered." On February 16th, Putin has murdered my friend and my president, Alexei Navalny. In these dark years of the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, years of pain and shame for failing to overthrow Putin in time, Alexei was giving me and millions of other Russians hope. Jailed, isolated from his family and the entire world, he still made me remember and be proud of Russia I once lived in, our tribe who fought for free Russia, free-spirited, brave, creative, open-minded, clever, kind people. Not perfect, no, none of us were perfect, but I loved us in our imperfections. What matters is to have a moral compass, ideals and guts to fight for these ideals. In Russia, Navalny is the one who, in a postmodern world of cynicism and relativism, made having a strong moral compass cool again. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing, Navalny said when he was asked about what people should do if he gets murdered. I was 17 when I stepped in the world of political action. It was 17 years ago. I was growing up in the 90s. I'm a part of a lucky generation who witnessed competitive politics in Russia. It wasn't perfect, but nothing is. My daughter is less lucky. Born in 2008, now she's grown into a fierce young activist. She has seen nothing but Putin. My parents were cheering up for perestroika and leading the movement for democratic Russia in the village near Arkhangelsk, where they met perestroika and the fall of the Soviet Union. We still ask ourselves what our country would look like today if Boris Yeltsin, the first president of Russia, passed his power, retiring in 1999, not to a KGB agent Putin, but to a young democratic politician Boris Nemtsov. We would never know. Boris Nemtsov was shot dead in his back in front of the Kremlin in 2015, after he organized huge protests against Putin and against Russia's war in Ukraine. Every autocracy is based on two pillars. It breaks your body and it breaks your spirit. The first one, beatings, prisons, murders. Primary goal of all this is to break your body. The second one is more hideous and more dangerous in a way. It targets your soul and results in broken spirit, which manifests in self-censorship, learned helplessness, compliance, apathy. It makes you ask yourself, what can I change? Is everything predetermined? We can still prevent the world crumbling into autocracy, but it takes determination and courage. Democracy is the most fragile form of human organization, and it's precious. It needs us to show up for it. Democracy needs us. Help Ukraine win. Help Russian dissidents to fight Putin. And maybe do not elect a Putin-loving, authoritarian narcissist for your president again. Trust me, you won't love it in Putin's Russia. I am often asked what can be done. Simple answers. First, aggressive sanctions against Putin and his circle. Second, support Ukraine with any and all resources they need. Third, support Yulia Navalny in getting accountability for the murder of her husband. To close, I would like to address the intangible. Alexei warmed our hearts with his smile, his determination, his love. While looking at the photos of his casket yesterday, we're all left with an unbelievable emptiness. I struggled with how to put this feeling into words and share that with you all here. I considered the quote from my trial that applies here as well. Like Solzhenitsyn, I believe that in the end, words will break cement. Solzhenitsyn wrote, "So the word is more sincere than concrete. So the word is not a trifle. Then may noble people begin to grow, and their word will break cement." But this vision of hope and the cracks in the cement do not wash away the indelible images of our friend and hero Alexei in his casket yesterday. When I was serving my prison sentence alone, I escaped into the world of books. I was trapped in my cell, but my mind wandered to deep and far places. I learned that in his final week, held alone in this polar wolf camp, so far removed from everyone, Alexei was reading the novel Naslediye, which can be translated as either Inheritance or Legacy by Vladimir Putin. I'll close with a scene from the book about a monument to someone who has just passed away. And while I sit here with the images of flowers and photos of Alexei across the world and the image of the tears in his wife's eyes, or the image of his corpse lying in that church in Moscow, I imagine Alexei reading these very words in his prison cell. In this excerpt, Roland marvels at the monument he has just made for the deceased Dr. Garin. The marble monument rose up majestically over the sandy precipice. The yellow rays of the setting sun danced in the folds of its marble robe, glittering on its shoulders and bare head. Having flown around the monument, Roland hovered directly in front of its massive marble face and placed his hand in its silver glove onto his high brow with the furrows of its marble wrinkles. The marble face was at the same height as Roland, a bit of silver floating in the air. He was getting ready to say something to this face, but having thought the better of it, he stretched his arms out along his silver body and bowed to the monument. Then shot sharply upwards and set his course into southeasterly direction. The marble giant remained there, standing on its plateau, not far from the precipice and the pine stump. The sun set. The sky darkened and the stars began to shine. A mist appeared over the swamp, thousands of froggy voices coming to life. Silence reigned in the crippled birch forest. The clouds obscuring the moon moved off to the side, and the moonlight came down onto the monument's face. In the moonlight, the face acquired a new expression, as if the marble giant were getting ready to ply apart its willful lips so as to inform the world that spread out all around it of something very important, but didn't yet wish to do so. In this excerpt, Roland marvels at the monument. The end of this passage can also be read as a statement about the future that is equally applicable to Navalny. We do not know yet the final words that will come from his bravery, humanity, and great sacrifice. Please stand for a few moments of silence. Thank you. With all my heart, Alexei. Покойся с миром.
Nadya, welcome and thank you so much for your powerful words. We are here together because of Navalny. You have the pop-up exhibition with works dedicated to Navalny. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal connection to him? How did you meet him? How did you become friends? What did he mean to you? How did he inspire you?
Navalny is a very special person. He led with love and courage and a very positive vision for the future. I saw him for the first time in 2007 when I came to my first rally. But when he really, really impacted my world, it was 2011, and Putin just announced that he's about to go run for president again for the third time. And, 2 terms of Vladimir Putin is not cool, but it's still kind of a democracy. You can rule for 2 terms in a row, but with the third one, it became obvious that he's going to become a dictator for life. So we the Russian opposition came together to figure out what we want to do. And I was 21, I was super young and super radical, and I really wanted something real to happen. And I couldn't see it anywhere. There were a lot of amazing, brave, and dedicated people, but they felt a bit discouraged, and they didn't have this fierce attitude that I was looking in, what I was hoping to see. And then Navalny came with his team, and it was a group of young professionals, professional lawyers, journalists. They were making very interesting investigations into the corruption in Russia. And he was smiling, and it really made me believe in him as a leader. So for years, up until now, and maybe even now, the Russian opposition, been building our own political agenda and political deeds based on what Navalny says and does. And sometimes we were totally in agreement with him, and sometimes we did not, but still we were in a dialogue with him. And he would always be there, like an older brother, or maybe for younger people, like almost a paternal figure. You knew that sometimes you can go into your inner immigration and focus on your personal stuff, but someone else will take care of the politics, and then you can just tap into his Twitter and he's going to tell you, well, go do the smart vote or something. He'll always come up with a strategy. So now I feel like we lost this figure that will tell us what to do. It means that we have full responsibility as full adults, and it's difficult. I'm fortunate enough to have both of my parents alive, but I feel like this is something that a person feels when their parents dies. So now you're the one responsible, and you're the only one in the room with this murderous dictator who Putin is. Navalny came to our courtroom when we were receiving our trial, and he supported us. He did not like the punk prayer first. He called us stupid girls. But then he saw the way our government treats us, and he started to get really, really involved. And he never was, big. And I mean, he's been like a celebrity politician for a while, but he never felt like he's too big to just show up at the court. He called the process of Pussy Riot he called it the new dark ages. And you can see this phrase in one of the works. And I didn't even realize that I quote Navalny. I guess it happens a lot. You just quote someone. I never told him that I started Pussy Riot partly because of him, because I was too proud. I was thinking, oh well, he's just a man.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So most people will know you as the founder of Pussy Riot, and you mentioned a few days ago that he was actually so inspirational in the start of the movement. Maybe first of all, most people might think that Pussy Riot is basically a punk rock music band, but it is so much more. Can you tell a little bit about what it all entails?
We've started Pussy Riot because we promised to make a lecture, just like today, and we picked a topic that sounded cool for us, but we didn't really know what it means. It was punk feminism in Russia. And then at night before the lecture, we figured that there's no really punk feminism in Russia, or we couldn't find any, so we had to create it. And so we came up with the name, Pussy Riot, and we wrote our first song. We started writing in the bathroom, and then my friend Kat's dad came and screamed at us. He said, he was really scared that I'm turning his daughter into a lesbian, which I didn't really. We would just spend a lot of time with each other, but he hated me. He thought I'm a dirty slut. And we presented the idea of Pussy Riot. We said it's someone else. We found it on the internet, some girls in balaclavas, and we presented it and played the first song. And so then the same day, we've heard the Navalny speech. And I was thinking it's just going to be one and done. You know, we did the lecture, we can move on with our lives. But then his determination really made me think that we should turn into something bigger and keep working. And what Pussy Riot is, it's a fake punk band. We never played instruments. We stole, or whatever. We stole the samples from old oi punk bands and looped it, and not in Ableton, not in any audio equipment, but we looped it in Premiere Pro. So it was like super unprofessional and just, as we say in Russian, made with shit and sticks. Из говна и палок. So it's an art movement. It's a performance art movement, and it's like, you know, you have IVV who recorded a music video once, but you don't call him a musician because of that. He plays with it as a genre. I think it's fun to be to appear as a punk band without being able to play any instrument.
Absolutely. So one of your very famous performances was when you climbed the altar of the Cathedral of the Christ the Savior Church in Moscow. And one of the results of that performance, it landed you in jail. You went to prison for about 2 years. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, how does it feel like to be a creative spirit, a free spirit in a totalitarian country like Russia? And what was the personal cost to you?
When we started Pussy Riot, Russia was very different, and it was easier to be in jail even. I mean, like I don't think we were in any real danger of getting murdered at the time. When we started Pussy Riot, it was the time when you still could project giant 40 by 40 meters skull and bones on the Russian White House, and then climb over the 6 meters fence, break some security cameras, and run away. And nobody would ever open a criminal case. You could get away with a lot. So I wouldn't say that Russia was free, but is gradually getting worse and worse. So what it means today, effectively, those people who came to Navalny's funeral yesterday, they were like, we all were expecting lots of people to get arrested. Luckily, this did not happen. But you have to understand that if you get arrested at the protest action, you might end up in jail for 25 years. So today, the price of protest is very high. What I really liked what Garry Kasparov said about expecting a revolution to happen in Russia. He said expecting a big mass protest in Russia is the same as expecting a revolution happening in Germany in 1943. It doesn't mean it's not possible, but the price is very high.
So you told me a few days ago that your whole life is about art and politics. You actually stole my book from the gift shop. What would you say is the power of art to express things that cannot be expressed, cannot be accomplished by any other means?
I think art helps to change people's minds long term, but also a lot of things can change people's minds long term. And the reason why I got drawn to art, because I really loved Russian avant-garde. And by the way, I want us to collectively think about the better way to say it, because it's not Russian avant-garde. It's not. Malevich is Ukrainian. But how do we call it these days? Yeah, avant-garde movement. It was utopian. It was imagining different futures, and what art can help is to imagine a different world. And with the disease of the avant-garde movement in the Soviet Union, in parallel, we saw more and more repressions coming up. And I think if it was possible for the rulers at the time to listen a little bit more to artists, then maybe it would turn out a little bit differently. So I believe that the role of art is to think about the future or imagine how reality could turn out differently.
Nice, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about the works you made for this pop-up exhibition. You have the fluffy frames, you have the rose patterns, you have the splatters of blood. How did you come up with these elements, and how are they constituting the message you want to convey?
I like to juxtapose harsh and radical and cute and feminine, cute and dangerous. Growing up, I was very masculine, and the more I realized, like the firmer I became in my feminist views as a teenager, the more masculine I'd become, and then I started to hang out with boys only and be like, yeah, I'm accepted by the boys club, and then I realized that it's a part of my inner misogyny. So I started to wear femininity almost as a drag. So when we started Pussy Riot, we were not people who wore dresses. We were sweatpants. And things that are good for escaping from cops, because we were activists for 5 years at the time. And then we had to go to the store to steal those bright tights. We reached out to our friends who were actually wearing dresses and asked them to give us some. We wore, I don't know, we felt awkward in it at first. So, but I feel like for me, it's very important to maintain this feminine side. So then this like fluffiness comes, and this fuzzy frames come from that, and roses just it's something more. I guess you have more feminine, traditionally feminine, but then you have very harsh statements. And these teddy bears who look fairly scary because they've been beaten. They went through some difficult times in their lives. Like, at least they look like it. And in the name itself, Pussy Riot, you see something that traditionally is seen as welcoming, warm, and like it's something that everyone wants to get, pussy, and riot, the opposite. So I love contrasts.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. So in your speech, you included a cautionary note about the United States. And we see, of course, a global rise of right-wing populism now almost everywhere. What would you say, and let's focus specifically on the United States now, what would you say is the lesson we can learn from Russia, from Putin's Russia, for this country?
I think those countries are very different, and I don't necessarily love to compare, because I think it brings us to sometimes at the wrong place. I feel like what's happening in Russia is just so dark. It's impossible to compare. But
I'm asking this because I think there's a real threat now to democracies worldwide, and
It's true,
including
yeah.
the United States.
It worries me a lot. And my political platform is very simple. I just want the world to be free. And I believe that political apathy that I was talking about in my speech, it brings a lot. And what really scares me, it brings younger generation to apathy and being detached from politics. But democracy is an ideal, and I know that nobody who embodies democratic ideals today can be perfect, but I think you still should get out there and try your best and vote. Some people told me, Navalny made nationalist remarks. How can you support him? Well, none of us is perfect. They say, Biden this and that. I'm not going to vote for him. But, well, he's just a man who embodies for now these ideals of democracy. And if you really have choice between Trump and Biden, I think you need to pick the one who will allow you to build your own politics, your own movements. You don't have to pick someone who is going to be perfect. You just need to pick someone who is not going to destroy the basis of your democracy. And I felt and before Navalny was in jail, I was saying it out loud. Well, I do not agree with some of his politics, and it may be true that once we do build the beautiful Russia of the future, which means that just having like somehow functional democracy, we would end up in different parties, and maybe we will be political rivals. But I want to get there, and I want to have this platform, and I don't want to be thrown in jail for speaking up. And now you have a person who openly says that if he's elected, he's going to throw his political opponents to jail. I don't think that's what anyone wants. Plus, I'm not American. I happen to be here today, but I care about what happens in this country because Russian monstrous dictator picks the worst that happens in this country and quotes it and mirrors it. He brings it back. He looks at American conservatives and being like, oh, well, they ban abortions, so let us start on trying to ban abortions in our country. In Russia, women had, and everyone with wombs had access to reproductive care, including abortions, more or less for the last 100 years, with an interruption for Stalin, but he's an asshole. And it's unthinkable for us, even in this terrible dictatorship, that we could lose our access to abortions. But after what happened here in the States, ultra-conservatives in Russia started to talk about, oh, maybe we also need to ban access to abortion. So we really need to understand that we live in an interconnected world, and we need to cooperate on a global scale to keep peace and democracy. And I know it sounds probably boring, but trust me, you would not love it in Putin's Russia.
Right. On that note, I want to ask you something about the concept of hope. The comparison you just quoted from Garry Kasparov, the revolution in Germany in 1943, doesn't sound very hopeful. But what is, for you, the most hopeful perspective for Russia, and how do we get there?
It's a big question. I guess for that reason I became an artist and not a politician. I just know that...
I'm asking you as a utopian thinker, though.
That's fair. Well, there are a few options. I mean, like, I hope he can sleep on a banana peel and die suddenly.
On a utopian note, yeah.
I know that this Russia that I talked about in the speech, it still exists. It's so fractured. Like, some of us are in internal immigration, we are in Russia, but we are silent. Some of us are scattered around the world. And the reason why I wanted to make this event today is just for us to see each other. Well, some of us are not Russian, but you care about this for whatever reason. And I think the main reason is that we do live in a global world, and it's like, if we want it or not, what happens in one place influence everything else. So today we have this island of the beautiful new free world of the future. And I think as long as we maintain these connections, and it's very important to maintain them in case Putin dies and just sleeps on a banana peel. If we don't have these connections, then, like, I'm being asked, may it be that the next person will be worse? Yeah, of course it could be. But I think it's important for us to build horizontal connections right here and today, and make sure that if we have a chance for change, this change will be made according to our values and not to someone else's values. And we have to be strong. Thank you.
That's great. Before we go to the Q&A, I want to ask you a last question, and that is, how would you say can we best honor Navalny's legacy and celebrate the free spirit of Pussy Riot?
Right now?
Let's do it.
So this is when we put on black clothes, or not yet? But what about the audience Q&A?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Let's do the audience Q&A, and then, yeah, we wanted to offer you to put on black clothes, and we wanted to take some photos, maybe some here and maybe some outside.
Okay.
It's like baptism in Pussy Riot.
Yeah. So my colleagues James and Rachel are coming here. There is one question over here. Yeah, we start here.
I want to add one thing about why I really wanted us to come here together.
Question, please.
As everyone else, I like to complain about Los Angeles. Like, people, it's scattered, people are busy with their own lives, nobody cares about politics. And then, so I was thinking like that after Navalny's death for a day, and then I was like, well, I'm an activist, so my job is to change something if I don't like it. But I know that deep inside and in their homes, there are so many people here who do care. So we contacted the Wende Museum, and they put this all together in, 5 days? And I'm really glad that even in these very dark times of a few weeks after Navalny got murdered, I found this force in myself, and that you found this force in yourself to overcome your past passivity and sense of hopelessness and come together and create something to make this step. It's very meaningful to me.